Keltner, and you're here on Soapbox. We're going to be talking about a very important function of the peace movement, which is counter-recruiting, the answer to the military's pressure to get more people to join in their murderous obsession. But before we do that, we want to thank the people who contribute to our show and make it possible. And that really starts with Pieces Pizza, which is on 21st Street between M and N. And Pieces Pizza supplies the pizza for our crew. We always say that the crew works for peace, and it works for pizza, which makes it a very inexpensive crew. But it's really delightful that Pieces does this. 21st between M and N, and it's open late at night. It's a fun place to hang out, especially when the evenings are warm, because it's right on the sidewalk and you can watch people passing by like a really big city. It's fun. The other people who help us out a lot are the people at Humor Times. And that's James Israel, who's been putting out this little, actually the comic press was his first proposition. It's filled with cartoons, both from left and right, but a lot of good commentators, primarily from the left-hand side of the column. And that would be Jim Hightower and Andy Borowitz, who's extremely funny. Comic writing about politics is hard to come by. And it's a wonderful little gift, now that we're moving into the gift season. It's a wonderful gift for people in your family, whether they agree with you or not. Make them laugh about the current political scene. And we thank James Israel because he advertises our show. Now, here I have the real folks that really make the program possible. I have four people here from Peace Action, from Veterans for Peace, and what would you like to be aligned with?
I'm also associated with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
He's not a woman, but he's associated with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And we're all for peace and working on it the right way. I want to introduce, first of all, María Cornejo. Maria, give your tiny spiel immediately, because there's something that we want from you. We come to you for free, of course, and at enormous personal expense, driving all the way out from Midtown to the East Sacramento. Maria, what do we want from people who are watching?
Well, the most important thing we want to bring home today is this is a combination group between veterans and non-veterans, and we are working to make sure that students in classrooms in all high schools have access to accurate information about their options, that if they want to serve their country, we want to talk to them about AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. If they want to travel, we want to give them information about other options. But first, we need to get to students and give them accurate information. So if anyone out watching today is a teacher or knows a teacher, please give them our information, give them our name, Sacramento Area Peace Action. We have a committee, a group that will go into your classroom and give a free presentation to your high school students.
And about how long does the presentation take?
It's roughly 45 to 50 minutes. We've done, sometimes some teachers have double classes. We can do an hour and a half. We can do 30 minutes, whatever the teacher has. Usually we go to high school history teachers, government teachers, social science, but we've done English classes as well, and others, so it's a pleasure.
So the help that we need from you are if there are teachers watching, or if there are people related to teachers who would be willing to invite these stellar people to talk about their experiences, because young people do not have access to ideas about alternatives, and in this terrible economy, they need to know that. So, and let's go to you, Barry Binks, to start with. What got you interested in counter-recruiting or Veterans for Peace?
Well, really the war started in 2001, so for 14 years I've been an anti-war activist, and it's continuing. 14 years is long enough to lose the war, and we should get out of it.
Well, we have not won a war. When was the last time we won a war? You know, I really love it that we spend $500 billion of our discretionary monies per year, and we can't win a war. And when we take on somebody who has an air force, we'll really be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've gone after third world countries that don't have any. So did you have personal experience in the war, Barry?
No, I didn't. I was fortunate. I was in the military before Vietnam, and a lot of my friends did go to Vietnam, and I can tell them that it ain't over when you get out. I mean, a lot of them have had problems, medical problems that the military doesn't take care of, and they've had mental problems. They've had all of the things that most of them won't talk about until they get into a group with Veterans for Peace, and the brothers get together and talk about it. And even though I wasn't in Vietnam, they sit down and want to tell me their experiences, and I can see that they need to talk about it. It's such an experience.
Wow, that is so interesting. So one of the things that Veterans for Peace serves as is a listening board
Oh,
to
yeah.
the painful experiences that vets have gone through
Right.
that they
right.
don't dare share.
Absolutely.
Well, it is against human nature to kill another human being. I do believe that. I mean, aside from your ex, for example. Then it's excusable, possibly. But to kill a stranger, you know, or even to kill somebody in your neighborhood, that goes against really, I believe, something profound in human nature. And as everyone knows, I'm sure everyone knows, that the generals in what war found that soldiers weren't shooting enough. They could give them the guns and they'd face the enemy and they would not shoot enough. Does anyone remember this?
Right, yeah.
And that's when they instituted the training to turn men and women into kill animals. So that, not an animal, kill machines.
Well, they can take it away from the human being now too, because they're developing autonomous drones that they can program their computer in the drone to pick out the target and kill the target without any human input, so they can avoid the whole situation with that. So, but then we know that those computers never make a mistake, do they?
No, it's lucky that we never kill any innocent people, period, really. And the interesting thing to me is that the people working the drones are coming down with PTSD.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have two friends that were analysts and drone operators that had PTSD, had to get out of the military, and they both have left the country. They're out of the country now. They've gone.
They became so disgusted with...
Well, one of them's protesting over in Germany right now, and the other one's going to school in France. So they have to get away, and they did have PTSD. They got out with PTSD. They're getting medical care, but it's hit or miss. One of the big problems with medical care is this stuff is so top secret, they can't tell anybody what they did. Why do you have PTSD? Well, I can't tell you, it's a secret. So how do you
Wow.
get treatment for that?
Oh, that's really a kind of torture, to put somebody
Yes,
through experience that almost knocks them out psychologically and then forbid them to speak about it.
Exactly.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Right. Mhm.
Well, it's one way to take care of the expensive veterans benefits. They kill themselves. How many people kill themselves in the military? Is it 3 a day?
20 a day.
Yeah,
That's
22.
22.
22 suicides a day of soldiers and former soldiers.
At Beale Air Force Base, the Airman of the Year at Beale Air Force Base turned around the next month and committed suicide. Airman of the Year.
You know, let's keep these thoughts in mind. This is such a bloodthirsty country. You know, I don't watch much TV, commercial TV. I don't have a TV. I like to say I make TV. I don't watch TV. But I was visiting my sister, so I watched a lot of our TV. What bloodthirsty, violent, pro-military. Anyway, I can. And then when people say, "Oh, it doesn't create violence; it just desensitizes you." Oh, okay. Daniel Garza,
Yes, ma'am.
you are a member of VFP, Veterans for Peace,
And Peace Action as well.
and also Peace Action.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what drove you to make this step?
I am a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. I was in the U.S. Navy for 6 years, from 2003 to 2009. And just in the middle of my first deployment, I got disgusted with the war. It wasn't doing anything. There was no goal. There was no finishing. There was no way to win. And to see our aircraft leave the aircraft carrier with bombs and to come back without them, you wonder where they went. And I mean, there's a lot of statistics out there. Some estimate over 1 million civilians in Iraq alone have been killed. And that, it bothered me. It really affected me. So when I got out, I really wanted to do something to help change that mentality that we always have to invade, that we always have to go to war.
I'm inviting any viewer to go to your computer and pull up Vladimir Putin's speech in front of the United Nations. Incredible.
I saw that. That was very good.
Isn't that a knockout speech? If we had one leader who would speak without rhetoric. You know, first Obama got up and said, when we go to the Middle East, we're bringing democracy and a chance for a better future and a chance to build a stable government and a democracy. And then Vladimir Putin gets up and really says what happened.
Yes.
You know, but he says directly to us, you're going to have to rise above your ongoing desire to dominate. And he addresses so many zingers to the people of this country and to the leaders of this country that it shows you why they're working so hard to demonize him. Anyway, you wanted to make some kind of restitution, really.
Exactly. I feel a little guilty, for having been part of it. I didn't kill anybody directly per se, but just my indirect actions definitely made a difference.
But what got you in there?
Getting out of high school, I really didn't have a place to go. I didn't have really a good future to look at. I talked to the recruiters. They promised me travel. They promised me education, that my education would be paid for. They promised me a trade. And they kept their end of the deal, but it's making a deal with the devil. I mean, there's a lot of things that go along with that they don't tell you. And getting out of the military, they don't teach you how to be a civilian again. When you first get out, there's all kinds of things you're going through. You used to be in charge of people and millions of dollars worth of equipment, and you get out and you feel empty because you don't have that anymore, and you don't have that drive. There's nothing pushing you. There's nothing there. So there's a lot of reasons why we have 33% of the homeless in the streets are veterans. That there's reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And the VA is doing a really poor job of taking care of our veterans. I had a personal friend, my supervisor on deployment, just committed suicide this summer, and he wasn't getting the help he needed.
Well, in the I Ching, it talks about when the warriors come back from battle, especially if they're victorious, they have to be sequestered for a good long time to get the battle out of their blood and to learn to readjust to civilian life, where the answers are different to all the problems, But so now let's go to you, Don Knutson, not a veteran, but a military brat.
Yes.
So why does that make you anti-military?
Well, because I saw the military close up.
Dad?
Because my dad was he was actually an Iowa farmer, and so he got an exemption during World War II. But then 1946, he was immediately drafted, and that was the end of the family farm in Iowa. So the military draft contributed mightily to the decline of the family farm. And really, I didn't realize the sacrifice I made as a military brat until Mary Bisharat, a dear friend of mine who was a local peace activist, very, very vigorous. And when she passed away, there was a memorial. And her 8 grandchildren spoke fondly about the contributions that she had made to their lives. And I reflected upon my own life, and I never even knew my grandparents, because my dad was stationed on the West Coast. His family was in Iowa. My mom's family was in Manitoba, Canada, and I had no experience with family. So I was denied the nurturing environment of a family. And I can't say that my parents really knew what they were doing in parenting. And the military.
Well, none of us really do. I mean, unfortunately.
That's right. And that's why family. You have a family behind you to help, and that's where Mary made such a mighty contribution to her children becoming fine, upstanding citizens, and so I really felt denied in that way. And then to me, it is so bizarre that this country sends 18, 19, 20-year-olds overseas without direction, and they offer no sort of integration to learn about the native country. Because I lived in Japan 3 years during the Vietnam War, because my dad was stationed in Japan, and I saw that the fifth of Jim Beam was $1.25 in the BX, a carton of cigarettes, $1.25. So the military provides a keen opportunity to get hooked on alcohol and tobacco.
Cheap.
Cheap,
Right.
on the cheap, and there's absolutely no integration between the bases and the indigenous population.
Right.
Because it's an occupying army.
Right.
And it is so unnatural. No other countries do this. Only the United States has this network of huge military bases around the world.
That's one of
And
the
it's
things that
unnatural.
Putin said.
It's
Putin said, I have two bases. Russia has two bases. One of them is a little place with a few sailors and a telephone. That's the port in Syria. And he said, and you have bases in 150 countries. What are you? It's not us. And then we ask about the Muslims. Why do they hate us after we kill 1 million? I wanted to ask you, Daniel, were you computer savvy when you were on that ship? Was part of your disaffection from the military project stuff that you learned on a computer?
It's stuff that I learned watching foreign news and foreign media. It's the BBC. It's reading Australian newspapers. It was reading, not reading my own country's news and media, because they didn't talk about a lot of the stuff that was going on in the war. They didn't talk about the mistakes we were making. They weren't talking about. There's plenty in those years of the Iraq War during the surge that they weren't mentioning, right. And other countries were covering them. So I learned by reading those websites, watching that news, through the internet, of course.
That's so interesting, because I've thought of the fix of veterans or soldiers who are in the midst of a conflict and go to their computer and start having their eyes opened to some of the things behind it. Horrible fix, because they're still there. Mm-hmm. Maria, now let's get into what you say when you go to counter-recruit and what you talk about as other options. And please, all you folks, this is one of the largest groups we've had. We hardly fit on the screen. We only have 9 minutes, okay. So we're going to have to, feel free to break in. Maria, so what do you tell folks?
Well, this committee was started about 9 years ago, roughly, and it's a 4-part presentation when we get into the classroom. We do it with vets and with non-vets. And before I continue, I'd like to mention that every year over 1 million young people drop out of high schools all over the country. Over 1 million. It's like 7,000 students every day. Oh. And that's because, one, they're not finding what they want in school, and they're going to the streets, they're going into the military, they're doing something they shouldn't be doing probably. And it's also because, partly indirectly, the military budget is eating up our budget. The military portion of the budget, which is now going to be $605 billion in 2016. Way over half of our discretionary spending. So,
and if we just spend $700 billion, maybe we'd win a war.
Win, exactly. So this presentation goes in with many goals. We go in, first of all, to inform, to give options, and we cut it into 4 parts. We go over how the military budget and how government spending impacts them. Even if you never joined the military, even if your parents didn't join the military, or your brother or your uncle didn't join the military, you're impacted as a student every day by what the government spends on the military. And we show them, I won't go into the details, but we show them visual things. And every day when we do this, every time that we do it, someone's jaw drops because they didn't realize how much spending is going into the military budget. The second part is, so that's life before the military. Life during the military, a vet talks to the student for about 15 minutes about what it's really like to be in the military. The third portion is life after the military, and that's when a vet also does it, one of the other vets, and discusses everything from training, boot camp, how you lose your rights, how you can't say no, how you can't quit this job because it's not really a job, you signed away, how you don't have time off, they own you. It's life during the military, and then, that was before. Life after the military talks about post-traumatic stress disorder, if you were exposed to depleted uranium, and how that will affect your children and your children's children, etc. Homelessness.
Let's try Agent Orange, that the guys were sprayed with.
Exactly. Yeah. So before the military, during the military, after the military, and then a peace action volunteer steps in again for the fourth and final part of the presentation. And the peace action volunteer discusses life instead of the military. Hey, stay in school, finish. We talk to them about scholarships, grants that are available for the kids that want to go to school and don't have to join the military to get money for college, which they weren't going to get anyway, but we'll go into those details in the presentation. They won't, most of them never see $1 because there are so many requirements. Even if you do your 8 years, many vets never get the money. But that's a whole nother presentation.
No, but that's an important thing to say, right?
It is, exactly, and we go into detail about that. But even for the ones who do go, that come out, we talked about them how to get money, how to, some of them don't want to go to college, so we talk to them about vocational careers.
Right.
Mechanics, plumbers. You know how much money plumbers make and electricians?
They certainly make more than assistant professors.
And some, well, I won't go into where I work. But so then we also talk to them about if you want adventure instead of the military, join the AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, Conservation Corps, protect the environment, serve your country. That's wonderful. But not carrying a weapon and being faced with that horrible decision to kill or be killed.
Right. Now, speak, any of you, to any of these aspects that have moved you, Barry or Daniel?
I just say that when I went to college, it was almost free. I mean, we had to pay a few fees, we had to buy books, but it was almost free.
Right.
I know people now that have $200,000 worth of debt to go to college. They have $2,000 a month payment on their college loans, and it's just crazy. How are they expecting these people to spend money on anything else to stir up the economy and make it better? We're still not out of the recession.
So this drives people into the military.
It drives
thinking
them.
that they can pay for
well,
college
yeah.
that way.
I don't know. Danny, I suspect, joined the military partly to get GI Bill. He used it. I used it. And it cost me nothing to go to college. Danny's used all of his up now, and he's got to pay his own way.
I'm not freeloading, but we're at the 5-minute mark, and it's see how fast this goes. I want to remind people, if you're a teacher out there, or if you know someone, a teacher, a child who's a teacher, who would be willing to invite people like this, think of what an interesting class you would have, and how much this would interest the students in your class. To get a little touch of reality and what's really happening out there.
And they can call Sacramento.
448-7157.
Yes.
Let's get it up. Yeah, I memorized that during our many wars. 448-7157. Here are the different people you can call. And sacpeace.org, Veterans for Peace. We'll bring that up on the screen. They can't see the website, folks. Veteransforpeace. What is it?
Org.
.org. Okay, easy enough.
Another thing I want to mention is I want to especially teachers who teach in areas that are in a lower socioeconomic
good point.
bracket. The military recruits poor people. You don't see ROTC
at Yale.
You don't see them in even high schools. Your JROTC programs. You don't see them in socioeconomic economic neighborhoods in a higher bracket. You don't see it because those parents aren't going to let their kids join the military. They don't have to join the military.
Right.
The war is poor people fighting poor people. That's what it is. Exactly. And they take advantage of people in a lower socioeconomic class. They take advantage of their inability to go to school, of their inability to find a job, to make them go to war, and it needs to change. This
is why they call it the poverty draft.
Definitely.
You know, and one of the best signs at the corner at 16th and J was always rich man's war, poor man's blood.
Exactly.
And it's way too true.
Yeah.
Way too true.
Yeah,
Do you want to add something?
And it wasn't the military. It wasn't the peace activists who stopped the draft. It was the military who stopped the draft. They simply didn't want the dissidents to come into and contaminate the pool. So that was that is a clear reality of what the military has in store for you when, you know, they will program you to fit their needs.
That's a good point, because it's also true that poorer people most usually are easier to control because they don't have the sense of being able to fight for their rights. You know, they don't feel the privilege of having rights in this country. More about this. How many schools do you visit?
As many as we get invitations, so that's why it's so important to bring that home.
448-7157.
Local. And we also need to mention the opt-out form. The No Child Left Behind Act requires high schools to give lists of their students, and they have access to home phone numbers, addresses. We've talked to students who went to the graduations this last spring, and the students told us, oh, they called me at home. They knew my name, they knew what classes I was in, and they told me
What's the opt-out form?
The opt-out form is a form you can get online and take it to your school, and then they take you off the list. Go online anywhere and opt out.
Opt out of this murderous pursuit, you know, and become part of the peace action.
Be all you can
And
do.
also, here, I hope people, can you zoom in, dear Tom, and see my button here? Because I just listened to Bernie's, oh, here, I'll come up if you can't come down. We love Bernie. I think we all love Bernie.
Yes.
Don't admit it if you don't. Because Bernie has been against these wars from the start. He filibustered against the Iraq War, gave a very moving speech, and he wants to change the economy so that the people at the bottom have other choices than joining the military. He wants to get the money moving at the bottom of the economy and up into the middle of the economy. And believe me, here's my prediction. I think he's going to win by a landslide. I think
think so, too.
Republicans who are making under $50,000 a year, and that's 75% of our population makes under $50,000, and 30% of our population makes 20 or less. All those people will be affected positively by Bernie's candidacy, and so tune in. Oh, it's too late for. It's already passed. I want to thank Greg Popejoy, Stephen Barassa, our producer and director. Carol Stevens did our graphics, and Greg Popejoy did the audio. Greg Popejoy will do the playback, and Steve Barassa lit the set. Most of all, I want to thank Tom Rowe, who has lit this camera, and Ricky Kong, a new person joining us today. I hope you'll keep on coming. Keep coming back to Soapbox for only one reason. People really do matter. Yeah.